Hey everybody, it is Trags Mike Petralia back with another episode of the JungleRoar podcast. It is available wherever you download your favorite audio podcast. Also available on the YouTube network, the JungleRoar podcast YouTube page. Want to hear all of your comments, good, bad, and indifferent. So click on that link below, subscribe, and let us know what you think. Back with this episode of the podcast, I am joined by Andrew Gillis of Cleveland.com, doing a spectacular job in his first season covering the Cincinnati Bengals for Cleveland.com. You can also catch him on the Strictly Stripes podcast with Mohammed Ahmad and the one and only Mike Niziolek. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing good. This is a little bit different than the last time we did it. I think it was after the Dallas game that we did
Oh,
this.
yes.
They're in a little bit of a different situation, the Bengals are right now. So a little bit different tone.
You can also, by the way, follow Andrew on Twitter at Andrew_Gillis, Gillis 70. So be sure to do that. A much different posture for these Cincinnati Bengals. I thought they were a talented team, even at 0-2. I really, and I'm not trying to play fanboy here, but I knew that this team was capable of getting on track. All good teams that I've seen over the years that get off to slow starts, they take their time. They know how good they are. They just have to figure it out. And they have the confidence in the quarterback and the coaching staff to figure it out. To me, that's where really the turnaround began, is internally in that locker room. When they say there was no panic, I believe them. There was not a bit of panic in that locker room.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just that you could say, oh, they lost these games. They were 0-2, they were 2-3. They lost Pittsburgh, in overtime on a walk-off field goal. Probably win that game if their long snapper doesn't get hurt. You lose in Dallas on a walk-off field goal. You lose in Baltimore on a walk-off field goal. Like, your first 5 games, you lose 3 walk-off field goals. And, we all talked about this at the time, like, hey, this is going to come back to bite them at the end of the season, because there's no way this team's going to win 8 regular season games in a row. Even if they had a strong finish, we figured this might hurt them.
Right.
And it really didn't, as it turned out. I think those losses kind of gave us, kind of hints as to how close this team was, especially because you look at their schedule just kind of as a whole. They lost 1 game that they weren't competitive in, and you could really kind of make some excuses for that too, considering that was their first game without Jamar. It was a Monday night game against the Browns. It was only 8-0 at halftime. Like, you can really kind of nitpick their schedule, but they have been really, really close all year. And now, like you said, you kind of see how good they really can be.
No question. And, I want to spend some time here focusing on their defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo. Over that 8-game regular season winning streak, and obviously the 2 now in the postseason, their defense has really been, to me, what has carried them. Joe Burrow is an all-world quarterback. There is no disputing that. And I'm not sitting here saying, their defense is the best aspect of the team. Without Lou Anarumo coming up with different game plans week to week and having his team fully buying in, which is what I'm writing for CLNS Media on Tuesday leading into Wednesday. Lou Anarumo is the mad scientist, as Eli Apple called him after the win in Buffalo on Sunday. He does so many things to get this defense in the right positions. And he's overcome injuries to DJ Reader, who did obviously come back and was a big contributing factor of the defense toward the end of the season. But he lost Chido Awuzie for the year, his shutdown corner, his cornerback that was having an all-pro season. And when you talk about the teams that the Bengals had on the back end of the schedule, the second half of the season, I don't think anybody could have imagined the defense turning it up a notch the way they did.
Yeah, you look at, like, I'm glad you said that, because you look at the schedule. You play the Titans and Derrick Henry. You play the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. You play the Browns and Nick Chubb. Tom Brady this year was not obviously the best for the Buccaneers, but they're still really talented offensively. You play the Ravens, who could run the ball really effectively. Like, you can go down the line and look at different things. And I have the schedule right in front of me. They've allowed 20 or more points once since they played the Chiefs on December 4th, and that was against the Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. You could point to some things. The Ravens were at the goal line and they knocked the ball out, but that's what this defense has done all year. They've made those plays when their backs are up against the wall. You think of the Jermaine Pratt fumble recovery, the strip of Travis Kelce at home, the Logan Wilson play where he bats the ball out and Hubbard takes it 99 yards. Like, this defense has done all of those things because they are incredibly well coached. It's a credit to Anarumo because you look at, especially this past game in Buffalo, Josh Allen threw for 265 yards. I looked at that at the end of the game. I don't know about you, Trags, and I was kind of surprised to see 265. It didn't feel like it.
No, it
It
did
did
not.
not feel like 265. He threw for more yards than Burrow did. Again, did not feel like it. They just did such a good job of taking away the things that the Bills like to do, and I think that's what kind of Anarumo does that other great defensive minds in the league have done. Like, you think of Bill Belichick, you think of some other guys. We're going to take away your number one option, and if you can beat us with your second and third and fourth guys, so be it. But Stephon Diggs, what do you have? 4 catches, 35 yards. They really tried their best, and they did their best to take those guys out of the game. And when you do that, you make teams flustered. You make teams have to adjust on the fly, and that's what I think the Bengals have been so good at over these last couple of weeks.
4 catches, 10 targets, Andrew, for
Yeah.
Stephon.
Oh, yeah.
They targeted him. There was no question about that. I have actually the stat sheet in front of me. I'm glad you brought that up. So when you take a look at the numbers from Buffalo on Sunday, 10 targets, only 4 catches for Stephon Diggs. In terms of Gabe Davis, I would never have thought this going in. 2 catches, 4 targets, 34 yards. You bring up Bill Belichick about, the old staple of, I'm going to take away your number one weapon and you're going to have to find other ways to win. Here's something else Bill Belichick used to love to do, and I saw it in Super Bowl 36 with the greatest show on turf. With that Rams offense, what did he do? What did he tell his defensive backs to do? Beat the shit out of the wide receivers. That's what the Bengals did to the Bills on Sunday. They absolutely beat up Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. And how about Cam Taylor-Britt telling us, in a Zoom call on Monday, receivers are soft. And he wasn't just talking about the Bills receivers. He thinks that receivers in general, that's his mindset going into games, that receivers are soft. If you get physical with them, you knock them off their route early in their route, they're going to get frustrated. And it's fascinating to me that a rookie out of Nebraska coming into the NFL has that kind of cachet mentally to execute that. I just found that fascinating. And the fact that you have Eli Apple and Cam Taylor-Britt, 2 guys who you can criticize their technique all you want. Certainly people will do that with Eli Apple. And, when he bit on the route in the Ravens game and got burned for the touchdown by, I believe, Demarcus Robinson, right?
It was Robinson.
Yeah, for that touchdown. He took heat. He's fearless, though, and so is Cam Taylor-Britt. And that's why I think the Bengals have a chance, because their cornerbacks are like, we may give up a play or two. There's going to be people behind us who have our back, the safeties. And B, we're going to bounce back on the next play.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Lou talked about it to us yesterday when we were in the room, when on that Cam Taylor-Britt play where he got beat by Gabe Davis off the line of scrimmage, you've kind of been waiting for Cam Taylor-Britt to start to make these plays because he's got the athleticism. He ran a 4.38 at the combine. When you've got that recovery speed, it allows you just that much more, that little extra boost that you need where you can take a chance because you can make up for it.
Right.
It gives you that extra room for error. And I think that once Cam Taylor-Britt has kind of settled into this role, you've kind of seen him get better and better throughout the year, just as you progress as a rookie. Because remember, like you said, when you lose Cheeto, Cam Taylor-Britt was not supposed to be in this role. Cam Taylor-Britt was supposed to be kind of the guy, a little bit like a Dax Hill role where, you learn throughout the year, you sub in when Eli or Cheeto gets hurt.
Exactly.
Yeah, and this was supposed to be kind of that year for Cam, and I think you've seen him get better, and with that athleticism, that's really, really big for him. But the DBs absolutely, like you're right, did a bang up job against Diggs and Davis and all those guys on Sunday.
So you've been in all those sit downs with Anarumo throughout the season. We, just some inside baseball to the audience here. Our coordinators, Bengals coordinators, will come in, both Brian Callahan and Lou Anarumo, and sometimes Darren Simmons, and sit down with us at the table. And we ask them about different strategies. We ask them about different philosophies, who's playing well, who's not playing well, who needs to improve. The thing that I've noticed, Andrew, is that every time he's been asked about Cam Taylor-Britt, he's very cautious
Yeah.
in showering him with praise. But I do get the sense he loves the way Cam Taylor-Britt plays. He's physical, he's fearless, he doesn't care. He's going to go back, he's going to work hard in the film room. He's very studious. And I think Lou, deep down, respects the kid and loves the kid the way he plays.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I've thought that exact same thing too, because I think always, what, Lou, tell me about Cam Taylor-Britt. Oh, he's playing well. He's getting better.
He's
And then
improving.
yeah, he's
He's
improved. Yeah,
improving.
there's always something like that. And I think you mentioned it right there. Cam Taylor-Britt is a really confident kid, and you need to have that if you're going to play this position in this league. So I think that's you don't want him to get too confident, because again,
No,
he's still learning, and I think that that's a great way to do that, because you don't want Cam Taylor-Britt to read defensive coordinator quote, oh, he's great, he's doing this, he's doing that. You need to keep him motivated throughout the year, and I think that's a great way to do it. But I agree. I think the Bengals really, really like what they have in Cam Taylor-Britt.
the other thing about Cam Taylor-Britt, I think even if you did say that about him, he strikes me as somebody who has a really good head on his shoulders, and he
Yeah.
wouldn't
Oh yeah.
get that full of himself. I love Eli Apple, love talking to him, smoking a cigar after a playoff victory. Eli's a different cat. And if you said that about Eli, maybe it could, be interpreted the wrong way. Maybe Eli could take it the wrong way. What do you think of the way Eli Apple's been playing? Because I don't think he gets enough credit for just doing the simple things and the solid things that Lou Anarumo has been asking him to do. I think for the most part, he's done a solid job. Is he a Pro Bowl shutdown corner? No, that's not, what he is. But I think he's done a very commendable job.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you kind of just survey people around the league, people kind of act like he's the worst corner to ever walk the earth. And I think part of that is just, when he goes on Twitter and he starts tweeting out Josh
Last night,
Allen and Stephon Diggs couples therapy. I think people just like to dunk on him. I think people just like to make fun of him. They just like to kind of, here's this guy, who's talking a lot of trash. And listen, and I'm sure Eli understands this. If you talk a lot of trash and then it goes sideways, it's coming back. That's just the way it works.
right.
And I think people just like to do that. But I think Eli's played pretty well this year, because you can kind of look at we've talked about this too. The defense, they don't have a Jalen Ramsey, Aaron Donald, Fred Warner type of player that is a top 1-2 player at the position. They just have a lot of really solid guys that do their role, and Eli plays a really good job into that. And I think that I've seen some people say that when you look back to New York and Carolina, New Orleans, he's playing the best football of his career. I don't know about all that, but he's playing at a level that is allowing the Bengals to kind of do what they want, and I think that's just as important as is kind of playing a superstar role here.
You mentioned you put numbers on where players rank at their position. You just talked about that.
Right.
What do you think of the fact that the latest postseason awards for the regular season
Right.
play came out, and the Pro Football Writers came out with their ballot, and we're both members of that. And just like the AP All Pro team, not a single Bengal on it. And I think some fans think that's disrespect. I think other fans don't have a big problem with it, because the Bengals don't have, at least on defense, have any spectacular clear number one players. What they do have is they have a lot of 2, 3, and 4s who are first of all, very competent, very good, very reliable, and incredibly well coached, and understand what their responsibility is on the field. I mean, Sam Hubbard, Lou Anarumo talked about this yesterday. Who talks about, pushing a run to the cloud side coverage in a zone defense, for instance. Who does that on a plane ride home from a playoff win? Well, the Bengals do. And I think, Zach Taylor has talked, Andrew, being all about ball. That's what the Bengals have. They have a lot of players like that. I think DJ Reader is a top 3 defensive tackle in football. I think Sam Hubbard is a top 5 defensive end in football because he sets the edge so well and he plays so consistently well. I think Von Bell doesn't get enough credit as a safety, and I think Logan Wilson is a top 5 linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, that absolutely, and I think one of the things when you mentioned the all pro teams and things like that, I think the outrage and the things where people, that looks a little funny that there's no Bengals. I think that lasts until you look at the team and you go, oh, I get that. You could say, okay, maybe Jamar over Tyreek. I think there are people that would say you can make a very reasonable case that Jamar should be above Tyreek, but Jamar was hurt. Jamar missed 5 games this year. Like that, and when you miss, almost a third of the season, it's hard to make these type of teams. You look at, you mentioned the linebacker. You got the 3 linebackers on the PFWA team: Fred Warner, Micah Parsons, Hassan Reddick. Like it's like they're hard to kind of disagree
Understood.
with.
Yes.
And you're right. Like the defense has kind of been doing it with, it's the no weak links defense. Where there's not really a defense where the Chiefs are probably sitting around going, they probably have their areas. We want to attack this, we want to attack that, but you're not sitting there going, we have to go after this because it's such a glaring weakness. Like the Bengals, I think, have done a really good job of kind of shoring everything up and making sure that, whenever you have to game plan for them, it's hard to do because there's not really an area that's glaring.
Speaking with Andrew Gillis, he does a great job covering the Bengals and the NFL for cleveland.com/Bengals. If you want to head over there and catch the coverage, he also does a fabulous job as a co-host on the Strictly Stripes podcast, covering all things Cincinnati Bengals for cleveland.com with Mohammed Ahmad and Mike Nizilik. Be sure to download the latest episodes throughout the playoffs, wherever you download your favorite podcasts. All right, back with Andrew Gillis here. And we haven't mentioned Joe Burrow, who only started 9 for 9, 105 yards and 2 touchdowns on the first.
Only 9 of 9?
On the first 2 drives on Sunday afternoon. Probably as good a start as the Bengals have ever had in their playoff history to any playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of crazy because going into that game, you noticed this as well. I think everybody noticed this. Buffalo is a really difficult place to play. It's snowing. Everybody knew it was the last home game for the Bills of the season because the Chiefs won the day before. You just kind of expected the energy to be there from the Bills. And the Bengals really went down the field like it was nothing. They drove right down the field and scored. And the start, I mean, when you go up 7-0 and the other team with Josh Allen hasn't touched the ball, and then you go up 14-0 when that quarterback has touched the ball 3 times, that is a really, really dangerous hole to play behind from. Because, it's one thing if it's a team with an average quarterback or whatever. This team is not a team with an average quarterback. When you have an offense that can score like this, that is just so difficult to play from behind from. Earlier in the year, I was kind of not on board with the take the ball first and try to get out to a lead. I didn't necessarily agree with it. I like the double up strategy. Now I think this is the perfect strategy for this team, considering how well the defense is playing and how good the offense is. That's just something you have to do. But yeah, I mean, Burrow was unconscious for those first, especially. I mean, really, he was great all game, but those first couple of drives, oh my gosh, he was unbelievable.
So, as you know, I don't know if you've heard this, but I covered the Patriots and Tom Brady, and many times in the 2010s, Andrew, I went into Buffalo, and the storylines into those games was following. This is the year the Bills put their foot down on the Patriots, finally step up to Big Brother and show that the Bills are going to be right there with the Patriots, and we're going to beat up the Patriots at our home in Orchard Park, back then Ralph Wilson Stadium. And sure enough, Tom Brady would come in and do precisely what Burrow did on Sunday. He'd march down the field. He'd be like 10 of 11 for 115 yards, 2 touchdowns, get up on the Bills 14-0, 21-3, game over. And and the Bills crowd would be immediately taken out of it. And you could sense there on Sunday with Joe Burrow and the crowd that they felt the same way that those Bills fans did back when Brady would always come in to Orchard Park. The opposing quarterback has the ability, if he's on his game, to suck all the wind out of the home team's field and their fans. And that's what Burrow did such an amazing job of on Sunday.
Yeah, and I mean, we mentioned the opening, and we mentioned the start, and obviously he was great during that period. Don't get me wrong, but he used his legs, I thought, really effectively when he had to. He had a few scrambles where he just kind of realized nobody was there and took off and ran. But then, like even after those first two drives, I mean, like credit to him for finding the guy, but Jamar Chase and Hayden Hurst were wide open. But that throw to Jamar Chase that was the touchdown that wasn't a touchdown was unbelievable. That was maybe one of the best. That was maybe his best throw of the year. That was absolutely stunning how well he placed that ball. And then he had another really underrated throw. I thought. I think it was the play there where it was definitely to Hayden Hurst, where I think it was the play where
Yes.
Hurst leaped over the defender. There was a closing safety. You had a safety coming from the other side, and you had a linebacker dropping, and he just dropped it right in the bucket, right on time, right where it needed to
Was it
be.
the pass
I
over the
thought that,
middle?
yes.
I know the pass you're talking because
Yeah, I thought that was remarkably impressive, and obviously that's not going to get some of the credit that the Jamar throw makes, and obviously rightfully so. But when you have a quarterback that's on one, I don't know what you do as a defense other than throw your hands up and say like, "What do you want me to do here?"
So what was interesting about that, I was sitting next to James Rapine in the press box, and he mentioned something to me about it looked like Hurst was wide open until you watch the replay. Hurst was not from our back end, because just to give everybody perspective of where we were in the press box, essentially we had the all 22 look from a corner of the end zone, but we were looking straight down the field, and it looked like Hurst was open. What we didn't see were the two defensive backs, or it was a linebacker and defensive back, covering that zone that Burrow had to throw over the defenders and underneath the safety and hit Hayden Hurst in stride. Just to give perspective to what you were talking about on that throw, it was a remarkable throw.
Yeah, I like I remember watching
We
that
take
and
it for
being
granted, I guess, Andrew.
yeah, like I remember watching that and I remember kind of thinking like that looked impressive because again, like you said, like there was nobody within four-ish yards of Hayden Hurst. Like theoretically he wasn't covered, quote unquote covered. There wasn't
He was
anybody
running
blanketing him.
free, but he was running
Yeah,
free in a
and
covered zone.
he just does that and you're like, "Oh my gosh." And then, the thing about this Bengals offense that is so elite is that you've got T Higgins that makes one-handed sideline catches and Tyler Boyd almost had a one-handed catch on another great throw, but Tyler Boyd reaches out, almost makes a great one-handed catch down the seam. Like this team they're so talented. It's kind of crazy that when Burrow doesn't put the ball in a perfect spot, you've got the receivers that have the ability to beat a guy one on one, just because that's how talented they are. They're. I mean, I just don't know. There are sometimes you look at it as a defense and say, okay, here, and here you could point out, but the offensive line held up. They did a great job, and when Burrow's on like that, I just don't know how it's not stopping. I get you just try to mitigate it as best you can. I guess I'm not sure what's the fix for that.
So it was snowing on Sunday in Buffalo,
Right.
and it looked really pretty. It's going to be cold as you know what on Sunday in
Uh,
Kansas City. And I hope you have your parka, your gloves, your hand warmers, your foot warmers, long underwear, whatever you need to get through the game. It's going to be a cold one. Fortunately, we're not on the field, but the players and coaches will be. And the reason I say this is The Bengals, as important as it was to get off to a good start against the Bills, I think it's equally important to get off to a good start against a banged up Patrick Mahomes, because what you don't want to do in that game on Sunday is turn it into a meat grinder where the Chiefs say, okay, we don't need Patrick Mahomes to do everything for us. Let's just try to make sure the Bengals don't beat us with huge plays. And I think for the Bengals to get out to a, let's say, a 10-0, 13-3 type of lead, 17-3 lead, 17-7, whatever, like
Yeah.
they did on Sunday, that will put more of the onus on Patrick Mahomes to really move around and make plays, essentially playing on one foot.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see, we were talking about Lou earlier. I'm really curious to see what this game plan is and kind of how it differs from the regular season game this year, the AFC title game last year,
Right.
because it's unique because again, like we kind of joked about this yesterday, me and some other people. Patrick Mahomes, like I understand Bengals fans, get tired of hearing about how good Patrick Mahomes is because they have their own great quarterback. But Patrick Mahomes on one leg is still really good. Like he can still throw the ball as a really, really efficient pocket passer. But I'm curious what Lou dials up in the way that, one of the things that makes Mahomes as good as he is that he can roll out and then throw it across his body 40 yards down the field. I'm curious to see what they do because, we've seen them spy Hubbard. We've seen them spy Logan. We've seen them spy Hendrickson. We've seen those guys drop back into coverage. We've seen all different types of things that the Bengals have done against Mahomes. I wonder if this week, early on, you don't see some unique pressures, stunts, blitzes, whatever it is, to
I
try and
hope.
get after him and force him to move around to see. It's a little bit, and you'll get this reference. It's a little bit like when Schilling pitched with the bloody sock. You got to bunt at least one or two times to see if he can move. Because if
Apparently
he
the
can't move, you got him.
apparently the Yankees didn't get that
And the
memo.
Yankees didn't get that memo. Exactly.
Um, but you're absolutely right. I would expect Anarumo to dial up more blitzes. You might see Mike Hilton a lot more early in the game on the corner, or some other blitzes that Mahomes and Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy haven't seen on film. This is the time to do it. This is the time to show some extravagant, exotic is the football term, exotic blitzes, and maybe even ghost some blitzes and disguise them and then drop back. But you have to make Patrick Mahomes think that he's going to have to run for his life a little bit. And, their offensive line is good, but not, again, like Buffalo, I think there are holes there. And I think, certainly Joe Thuney is a terrific guard. And we know that Creed Humphrey is an all-pro caliber type of center. But I think the Bengals can make hay a little bit like they did against the Bills. You want to get after Mahomes. You want to make sure that if that ankle is hurting, he has to run and throw. That makes him a much less effective passer. I want to get your feel on what you think is going to happen Sunday and if the Bengals are going to be going to the Super Bowl again.
Yeah. It's I've been thinking about it all week, and like the line. What I always say is Vegas is smarter than I am when it comes to these things, except for last week.
Yep.
But most times they're right. And I think the line, it started as Chiefs minus 1.5, and now it's Bengals like minus 1.5. Like Vegas is telling us this game is going to be 28-24, 27-20. This is going to be another remarkably close game. My head tells me the Bengals. My head tells me the Bengals are going to go to the Super Bowl again. They're going to go into Arrowhead, or as some of the Bengals players said, Burrowhead, and they're going to beat the Chiefs. I just think that this team is playing with such confidence right now. But there is a part of me that thinks, it is, and I understand the Bengals aren't looking at it this way, but statistically, it's just hard to beat a team in this league 4 times in a row, especially when this team is really good. Because again, we all credit to the offensive line for how well they played against the Bills, but they've got to hold up again, assuming you're not going to have Jonah and Kappa. You need that to hold up. You still have to play Patrick Mahomes. I understand Mahomes might be limited, but he's still really good. Travis Kelce is the best tight end in football. He can wreck a game. So there are still things that have to go the Bengals' way. But I lean Bengals right now. I don't feel great about it yet. I'm not going to feel great about my prediction, but I do think right now in my head, I think the Bengals are going back to the Super Bowl.
So as I want to do, and I've already done it on this podcast once already today, like a Tom Brady analogy and reference here. And Tom Brady beat Peyton Manning the first 6 times they played each other. I see the same kind of storyline unfolding this time with a banged up Patrick Mahomes. If he is genuinely banged up, I just don't see Chad Henne coming in and saving the day for
Agreed.
Kansas City Chiefs. I think there are many factors going in the Bengals' favor, including a vibe and a confidence that they're playing with. I don't think they're overly confident or cocky per se, but I think they have a feel like if we're playing our game, nobody's going to beat us. And I think that's incredibly powerful. I think the Bengals go into Arrowhead, they get it done. And, the other thing I would say, the other reference I would bring up from the way long ago, long before your time, Andrew Gillis, is the Steelers had it over the Oakland Raiders for many, many years in the championship game. And it took, 5 or 6 chances for the Raiders to finally break through and beat the Steelers when it mattered most. And that's kind of how I see this developing on Sunday. I really see the Bengals winning, I think, by a good touchdown or so, maybe even 10 points. If they don't turn the ball, if the Bengals do not turn the ball over, they are not losing this game. They're going to win.
Interesting.
Also, tell our audience where they can follow you and get your latest material and content covering the Bengals.
Yeah. So you can read everything I write, cleveland.com/Bengals. Follow me on Twitter at Andrew_Gillis70. The Twitter part, I hope you have fun, because I try to make it fun. Because Twitter, it's becoming such a disaster, as Trags well knows. Twitter is not his favorite place in the world. So I try to make it fun. I hope you have some fun there. But yeah, thanks for shout out, Trags. I appreciate it.
You are the best, Andrew. He is Andrew Gillis. Be sure to follow him at all of the sites that he just mentioned. Does a great job covering the Cincinnati Bengals for cleveland.com/Bengals. He's Andrew Gillis. My name is Mike Petraglia. Again, be sure to click on the link below if you're following us on YouTube, on the JungleRoar podcast YouTube page. Want to hear all of your comments, good, bad, and indifferent. Until next week, he's Andrew Gillis. I'm Mike Petraglia. Thanks for watching.